Top 15 gems whose value could implode in 2026. In 2025, a single Argyle pink diamond sold for over $8 million per carat, and within months, experts warned the price could collapse. How can a stone once rarer than gold suddenly fall from grace? And what does that mean for the future of every gemstone you thought was untouchable? Collectors, investors, even royal families have watched fortunes vanish, not from fraud, but from misunderstanding the cycle of rarity. If you miss this countdown, you might be holding a gem whose glory is already gone. Welcome to Top 15 Gems whose value could implode in 2026. A journey through beauty, greed, and the hidden fractures inside a billion-dollar market. From stones born in volcanoes to crystals forged in laboratories, each one tells a story of brilliance on the edge of collapse. If this is your first time exploring with us here on Tops, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, because behind every shining gem lies a truth that could change how you see value forever. Ranked 15th, Rhodochrosite, the forgotten rose of the Andes, how a sacred gem lost its shine. No visitors pause before the southern display case of Buenos Aires Mineral Hall anymore. Among hundreds of glittering specimens, a single stone lies unnoticed, pale pink, threaded with white veins like the slow pulse of time itself. Once it was called the Rose of the Andes. Today it is little more than a faint blush beneath a layer of dust. Rhodochrosite forms deep inside ancient silver veins where manganese-rich water cools and crystallizes over millions of years. At roughly 1,000 meters below the Andes, each layer builds upon the last, a silent diary of temperature swings, earthquakes, and mineral breaths of an older Earth. When sliced thin, those layers reveal concentric bands of rose and ivory, delicate enough that even polishing wheels must hesitate. Its hardness barely surpasses that of gypsum. To cut it is to risk destroying it. Centuries ago, the Inca believed rhodochrosite was the blood of their kings turned to stone. Fragments of it have been found beside royal mummies in the Cerro de los Siete Colores, buried to guard the spirit of lineage. When European explorers rediscovered the mineral in the 18th century, its color quickly seduced collectors. By the 1900s, it was a romantic emblem of South America, the living rose trapped in stone. During the 20th century, it stepped out of temples and into Parisian and Tokyo jewelry houses. The deeper the pink, the higher the price. In the 1980s, a 12-carat cabochon sold for over $6,000. A record for a semi-precious gem. Yet that exact moment marked the start of its decline. What made it beautiful also made it unprofitable. Its fragility, once seen as a charm, became a liability in a market craving durability. By 2024, color-coded and epoxy-stabilized lookalikes flooded online stores. Synthetic rhodochrosite was cheaper, stronger, and easier to ship. Manufacturers shifted toward rhodonite or pink opal, stones that could withstand the lighting and handling of a jewelry showcase. On auction sites, the Incan stone of love now sells for less than the cost of a dinner for two. In Europe, crystal shops quietly removed it from catalogs. Demand had dissolved. In Colorado's historic Sweet Home mine, once a source of the world's most perfect spheres, the shafts stand silent and rusted. One former supervisor was quoted as saying, "No one pays anymore for beauty that breaks." A simple sentence, and an epitaph for an entire legend. If you find it strange that something so loved could vanish without noise, leave a comment below, because rhodochrosite proves that fragility isn't just physical. It's the faith that beauty will always matter. The museum lights shut off one by one. The air hums for a moment, then stills. No one notices when the pink stone disappears into shadow. Not stolen, not broken, simply no longer looked at. But not every stone fades quietly. Some still burn. And in 2026, one of them may ignite its own destruction. Ranked 14th. Peridot, the green gem fading into obscurity. How a 4,000-year legend lost its shine. The evening sun over the Egyptian desert once made the island of Zabergad shimmer as if the sand itself were laced with emeralds. Sailors navigating the Red Sea could spot its glint from miles away, a green fire emerging from a barren horizon. That glow gave birth to one of humanity's oldest gemstone myths, Peridot, the gem-quality form of olivine, crystallizes in magma deep within Earth's mantle, rising to the surface only through violent volcanic eruptions. Its chemistry, magnesium, iron, and silica, gives it the distinctive olive green hue that once fooled pharaohs and merchants alike into calling it Emerald of the Sun. Ancient Egyptians believed it guarded against evil spirits. Cleopatra's legendary Emerald collection likely glittered with peridot instead. For centuries, mining was confined to the rocky cliffs of Zabergad, now St. John's Island, accessible only 3 months a year when winds calmed enough for boats to approach. Laborers dug by torchlight to prevent confusing the gem's daylight sparkle with reflections of the sea. Each rough crystal, translucent, honey green, sometimes flecked with golden inclusions, was traded through Alexandria and Rome, becoming a sacred stone for priests and healers. However, the modern market has rewritten that sanctity. When the 1990s discovery of massive peridot deposits in Pakistan's Khorasan region and later in China's Xinjiang province flooded the supply chain, rarity evaporated. Prices dropped, then stabilized, making them affordable, friendly, and endlessly available. Jewelers branded it as an accessible green gem, perfect for summer birthstone pieces. That image proved too successful. By 2025, peridot had become so common in commercial jewelry that even mid-range retailers began discounting it. And while high-grade stones over 10 carats remain scarce, the average consumer no longer distinguishes one from the mass-market versions cut by the thousands each week. Collectors quietly began shifting towards savorite garnet and demantoid, gems with similar color but greater fire, and crucially stronger scarcity narratives. The problem isn't quality, it's perception. In the age of social media, where rarity drives desire, peridot's gentle transparency seems too safe, too modest. Its once celebrated hue, olive green with golden undertones, now feels outdated beside the electric neons of Paraíba Tourmaline or the icy brilliance of lab-enhanced emeralds. Even the metaphysical market, which once prized peridot for heart chakra healing, has turned toward trendier stones like moldavite and green apophyllite. In auctions, signs of fatigue are clear. Between 2023 and 2025, average peridot prices fell by nearly 40%. Christie's Hong Kong, which sold a 52-carat Burmese peridot pendant for $28,000 in 2018, has not listed a comparable piece since 2022. Dealers call it a beautiful gem in search of new meaning. If you also find it unsettling that one of Earth's oldest gems is now considered too ordinary, leave a comment. Perhaps rarity has never been about numbers, but about narrative. Without belief, even the most intense volcanic fire cools. In jewelry shops from Cairo to Hong Kong, the green stones still sparkle beneath fluorescent light. However, the labels have changed. Peridot has been replaced by green gem, 40% off. The desert sun that once gave it life now bleaches it away. The glow remains, but no one remembers why it mattered. Yet while peridot fades gently, another gem faces a faster burn, one whose beauty depends entirely on fire itself. Ranked 13th, blue zircon, the forgotten blue rival. A small velvet box opens beneath a jeweler's lamp in Bangkok. Inside, a deep blue sparkle flares, so vivid it almost vibrates. Yet the dealer sighs. People think it's synthetic, he says, because it's too bright. The gem is blue zircon, one of nature's most misunderstood treasures, and one that may soon lose its place in the market hierarchy. Zircon is ancient, almost primordial. Some grains found in Western Australia's Jack Hills are 4.4 billion years old, the oldest minerals ever dated on Earth. It crystallizes from molten rock, locking within it traces of uranium and thorium that serve as natural clocks, recording the planet's earliest crustal history. However, the gemstone variety, usually found in Cambodia, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar, acquires its hypnotic color not from age, but from heat. A precise thermal treatment, around 900 degrees Celsius, transforms brownish zircon into the electric sky blue tone prized in jewelry. For centuries, this stone shadowed another, sapphire. In 18th century Ceylon, traders referred to fine zircons as the Matara diamond, or false sapphire. Its brilliance even surpasses sapphires, with a refractive index near that of diamond itself. But brilliance became its curse, because zircon sounded perilously close to cubic zirconia, the cheap synthetic diamond simulant of the 1980s. The natural gem's reputation suffered a blow from which it never fully recovered. By the 2000s, blue zircon sat awkwardly in the market, too bright to be subtle, too affordable to be elite. When lab-grown sapphires flooded global trade, the distinction blurred further. Consumers searching for blue gem online rarely encountered zircon at all. Algorithms favored sapphire, topaz, and moissanite. Even gemology students joke that zircon is the SEO ghost of gemstones, and yet scientifically it is extraordinary. Each crystal records radiation halos, microscopic scars of time, that tell geologists how continents cooled. In museums, it bridges art and astrophysics, a relic from the first billion years of Earth's life. But in boutiques, its label now reads semi-precious, a marketing term, not a scientific one, and a quiet demotion in prestige. In trade centers like Chanthaburi, Thailand, prices of medium-grade blue zircon have slipped nearly 45% since 2023. Collectors increasingly bypass it, favoring Spinel or blue garnet due to their rarity. A gem once radiant with optical fire now struggles under the irony of its own perfection. The more it sparkles, the more it looks artificial. If you also find it strange that authenticity can be punished for appearing too perfect, leave a comment, because blue zircon raises that uncomfortable question. When the human eye has been trained by imitation, can it still recognize the real? Today, blue zircon still shines, but no one is listening to its light. In every jewelry window, its fire is mistaken for something cheaper, its name confused with a synthetic ghost. What remains is an echo, a gem repeating another story, too bright to be believed, too old to be remembered. But while zircon still reflects another gem's glory, the next stone burns with its own inner flame, one so volatile that its very brilliance may consume it. Ranked 12th, Morganite, the gem that fell to fashion. How a symbol of love became just a trend. The numbers tell the story before the color does. Between 2021 and 2025, global sales of pink engagement rings rose 240% and then collapsed. At the center of that rise and fall stands one stone, Morganite. Once praised as the gentle cousin of emerald, it became the most overexposed gem of the social media decade. Discovered in 1910 off Madagascar's coast and named after financier J.P. Morgan, Morganite is a pale pink beryl colored by manganese. For most of its history, it lived quietly in mineral collections, admired by gemologists for clarity and pastel restraint. Then a single cultural shift, the digital obsession with rose gold and millennial pink, transformed it from a collector's stone into content. By 2020, wedding campaigns and influencer aesthetics had fused the gem with an emotion: soft love, soft colors, and soft luxury. In photos, it looked flawless, skin-toned, symmetrical, endlessly repeatable. Factories in Mozambique and Brazil scaled up production to meet that demand, while laboratories perfected identical pink synthetics. The market followed clicks, not geology. By 2023, Morganite was everywhere, on ads and algorithms, in endless loops of recycled tenderness. Average prices dropped more than 60% in 2 years. To most buyers, the word Morganite now meant a shade of pink, not a natural crystal. Search results paired it with rose quartz and cubic zirconia. The name survived. The meaning didn't. Auction houses sensed the fatigue. A gem once introduced by Tiffany and Company as a new color of sophistication disappeared from high-end catalogs. Designers moved on to bolder tones. Collectors no longer listed it among investment gems. Its value didn't vanish through rarity. It imploded through repetition. If you've ever wondered how authenticity dies in plain sight, leave a comment. Because Morganite's fall isn't a tragedy of geology. It's the mirror of our habits. A love story optimized for engagement metrics, not emotion. In the display cases, rows of identical pink rings gleam under identical lights. Each promises uniqueness, each repeats the same design. What once meant commitment now means conformity. And in that reversal, beauty fulfills the very cycle it was sold to escape. But if Morganite's fall came from imitation, the following gem's collapse comes from the opposite. A flame so real, so volatile, it may consume itself. Ranked 11th. Aquamarine. The gem that lost its warmth. How serenity turned into silence. At a jewelry fair in Geneva, the aquamarine section draws almost no attention. Blue stones gleam under perfect light, but buyers pass them by, heading for Paraíba Tourmaline in teal Spinel. Gems with sharper fire, louder color, and higher prices. The attendants rearrange the display again, but the air feels static, like the gem itself, serene and therefore invisible. Rewind a decade. In 2015, Aquamarine was still the ambassador of calm. Its name, from the Latin aqua marina, water of the sea, carried connotations of purity and renewal. Magazines referred to it as the color of peace. Royal collections from Britain to Brazil featured it as the diplomatic stone. Soft blue, non-threatening, universally acceptable. Every queen and first lady owned at least one piece. Rewind further. In the mid-20th century, aquamarine was a symbol of optimism. Beryl miners in Minas Gerais called it Pedra de Coragem, the stone of courage, said to calm nerves before war or marriage. Ocean blue gems weighing up to 100 carats were cut into emerald shapes, the preferred silhouette of that hopeful post-war era. It sold not on drama, but on reassurance. Further back still. In Roman times, sailors wore aquamarine talismans engraved with sea gods to protect against storms. It was traded from India to Alexandria, one of the first gems to link the Indian Ocean with the Mediterranean economy. Its value came from what it promised: safety, clarity, the illusion of a calm sea. Now in 2025, that promise feels misplaced. Calm no longer sells. Luxury trends demand saturation. Neon blues, acid greens, the visual noise of attention economies. In contrast, aquamarine's soft transparency reads as an absence. Even high-quality Santa Maria stones from Brazil have declined in value by nearly 50% since 2022. Dealers call it the gem you forget you already own. The problem is not beauty, but psychology. In a world addicted to intensity, serenity is mistaken for emptiness. The qualities that once made aquamarine desirable, balance, restraint, composure, now feel passive. Its coolness has turned cold. Manufacturers have attempted to counter the decline by increasing their size. Auction houses present massive cuts, hoping scale will substitute for scarcity. But even a flawless 50-carat piece rarely exceeds mid-tier sapphire prices. The color of calm is losing its currency. If you also sense that quietness no longer finds its place in modern taste, leave a comment. Because aquamarine's story isn't about fashion, it's about what happens when tranquility itself becomes obsolete. Before the fairs and the showcases, before the jewelry lights turned blue into product, there was only the sea, endless, reflective, indifferent. On its surface, sailors once saw protection. Today, the reflection looks back without warmth. If aquamarine's calm has turned to coldness, the following gem moves in the opposite direction. Fire, movement, and instability. Beauty that refuses to stay still. Ranked 10th, Pink Spinel. The gem that shone too bright and flooded its own market. In a cutting workshop in Chanthaburi, Thailand, trays of pink gemstones slide beneath fluorescent lamps. Their color glows vividly, like frozen sunsets. However, the number of buyers is fewer this year, and their offers are more subdued. These are pink spinels, the stones that, for a decade, everyone called the next ruby. Spinel has always been a master of mistaken identity. For centuries, it has been hidden inside royal treasures. The Black Prince's ruby, in the British Crown for instance, is actually a spinel. Formed from magnesium and aluminum oxide, it crystallizes in octahedral shapes, resembling tiny pyramids of light. Unlike corundum, ruby and sapphire, it's singly refractive, meaning its fire is clean, direct, almost glass pure. That purity once made it rare, until the world found too much of it. In 2007, a miner in Mahenge, Tanzania, unearthed spinels so bright they looked electric. Dealers called them bubblegum rubies, and the hype began. By 2015, Burmese and Vietnamese deposits joined in, flooding markets with every shade from hot pink to deep rose. Luxury magazines declared it the stone of a new generation. Fashion houses commissioned limited collections. Prices soared, then stabilized, then faltered. By 2023, the curve had turned. Too many new mines, too many investors, too much inventory. Synthetic versions blurred the lines further. Jewelry brands, once desperate for natural spinel, now sat on unsold stock. At auctions, mid-tier stones that fetched $8,000 per carat in 2020 fell below $3,000 by 2025. One dealer compared the market to champagne gone flat, still beautiful, but without excitement. In laboratories, gemologists insist spinel hasn't changed. Its chemistry is still perfect. Its luster still ideal. What changed is the context. When rarity dissolves, desire follows. Every gem's value rests on story, and pink spinel's story was overshared to death. Even consumers started noticing repetition. The engagement ring trend that once made it famous on Instagram now feels recycled. Collectors say, it looks like every other pink stone. The irony is cruel. A gem prized for its individuality has become a symbol of sameness. If you find that paradox unsettling, that too much beauty can dull itself, leave a comment. Because the spinal crash isn't about loss, it's about excess. It shows what happens when an element of the earth collides with the economics of attention. On the jeweler's bench, one pink spinel lies apart from the rest, flawless, unmounted, unsold. Its facets catch the light and throw it back again and again, as if still waiting for the gaze that once made it precious. The reflection keeps moving, but the stone does not. But not every gem suffers from oversupply. Some collapse for the opposite reason, their rarity questioned, their identity lost in the fire of imitation. Ranked 9th, Star Sapphire, the gem that lost its light, when perfection became suspicion. The most dangerous threat to a gemstone isn't a counterfeit, it's doubt. And few stones embody that danger more perfectly than the Star Sapphire. Once called the Stone of Destiny, it carried the faith of kings and monks, believed to hold the guidance of the heavens within its 6-rayed star. But in 2026, that same star has become its curse. Because today, technology can reproduce the miracle. Across workshops in Bangkok and Colombo, laser-treated sapphires now mimic nature's geometry with unnerving precision. To the untrained eye, the illusion looks flawless. To gemologists, it looks fatal. Because if every stone can shine like a star, then the real ones lose their meaning. Star sapphires are miracles of imperfection. Their celestial illusion, asterism, forms when microscopic rudal needles align within corundum, scattering light into a cross. No two stones are alike. Every star depends on randomness and light. For centuries, this flaw became its identity. In Ceylon and Burma, it was called the Stone of Destiny. Monks believed the moving star symbolized spiritual alignment, a visible link between heaven and earth. Royalty wore them as talismans. In 1935, the Star of India, a 563-carat specimen, became the centerpiece of the American Museum of Natural History, until it was famously stolen in 1964. The heist only amplified its legend. A gem so luminous, even thieves risked eternity for it. But legends don't age well in an era of lasers and laboratories. By 2024, technological enhancements, titanium diffusion, laser etching, and even star pattern overlays blurred the line between miracle and manufacture. Under magnification, some modern stones exhibit perfect stars that are too perfect to be real. Dealers whisper about fakes polished from synthetic sapphire boules, sold as rare natural cabochons. The effect is mesmerizing and dangerous. Once trust is questioned, even authenticity begins to dim. At auction houses, star sapphires with unclear origin certificates have lost nearly half of their average price in the past 3 years. Buyers prefer transparency, literally and morally, and the opaque dome of a star sapphire, once its strength, now feels like concealment. In gemology labs, older cutters lament the change. People used to see a moving star and think of the divine, says one. Now they ask about laser diffraction angles. The market shift is psychological. Collectors no longer buy faith, they purchase proof. And the star, that ancient symbol of cosmic connection, cannot survive in a microscope's glare. Yet the beauty remains. Hold a natural Burmese stone under candlelight, and the star still breathes. Slow, ghost-like, alive. It's not the gem that changed, but the gaze that looks at it. If you've ever felt that wonder itself can erode under too much analysis, leave a comment. Because the fall of the star sapphire isn't about fraud, it's about losing the ability to believe. In laboratories, scanners now catalog every known star sapphire, its coordinates, its inclusions, its light pattern. Each one preserved perfectly, like a constellation already mapped. The stars haven't disappeared. They've just been filed away. No longer mysteries, only records. But while the star sapphire fades into memory, another gem faces a crisis, not of belief, but of identity. A green treasure whose very origins have begun to blur. Ranked 8th, emerald. The gem that lost its truth. Inside the 2026 trust crisis, the greener the gem, the grayer the truth. From Zambia's mines to Swiss laboratories, the world's most trusted color now hides its most profound uncertainty. In 2026, the emerald market faces a paradox. The greener the gem, the grayer the truth. In Geneva's auction houses, million-dollar emeralds still shimmer beneath spotlights, each tagged with certificates and origin reports. But in the mining fields of Zambia and the laboratories of Switzerland, another kind of emerald is rising, identical, flawless, and legal. To the naked eye, they're indistinguishable. To the market, they're a ticking clock. For over 2 millennia, emeralds carried the mythology of royalty and divine favor. Cleopatra's mines in Egypt supplied the ancient world. Colombia's Muzo Valley ruled the modern one. Each location became a brand, each inclusion a signature of identity. Collectors could trace history through flaws, a fingerprint of origin. But that clarity is gone. In Zambia's Kagem mine, massive deposits discovered in the late 20th century shifted global supply. Suddenly, emerald wasn't just Colombian, it was African. Brighter, cleaner, cheaper to extract. The industry adapted. Then, laboratories in Europe and China perfected hydrothermal synthesis, producing emeralds chemically identical to the natural form. Beryl infused with chromium, grown in weeks instead of centuries. Certification agencies tried to keep pace, but under magnification, the differences are subtle. Even seasoned gemologists struggle to distinguish between those born from the earth and those born in glass. And for investors, that uncertainty is fatal. In 2024, lab-grown emeralds made their debut in mainstream auctions for the first time. By 2025, luxury brands began using the phrase sustainably created, a term that blurred the lines between ethics and economics. Consumers believed they were making a moral choice. Investors realized they were holding assets that could lose 80% of resale value overnight. It's not fraud, it's evolution. But evolution isn't always kind to belief systems. For centuries, the emerald symbolized truth, loyalty, and rebirth. Now it stands at the center of an identity crisis, pure in color, uncertain in soul. Dealers admit the damage quietly. One Swiss trader says, "The problem isn't the lab stones. It's that no one trusts the paperwork anymore." A sentiment that cuts deeper than any fracture. If you've ever thought beauty could exist without belief, this gem will prove you wrong. Because emeralds aren't losing their color, they're losing their story. And once a stone story collapses, value follows. In vaults across the world, emeralds rest side by side. Natural, lab-grown, certified, cloned. Each one flawless, each one real by its own definition. The gem that once measured honesty now mirrors confusion. The greener it glows, the harder it is to tell what's true. If emeralds suffer from too many truths, the following gem faces a different fate. A stone whose beauty depends entirely on illusion and whose market burns as fast as it shines. Ranked 7th, Tanzanite, the gem. Too rare to survive, how fame destroyed its value. Every gemstone wants to be rare. Only one became too rare for its own good. Tanzanite, born from a single slope of Mount Kilimanjaro, exists nowhere else on Earth. When it was discovered in 1967, Tiffany and Company called it the most beautiful blue stone ever found. Its supply was limited to just a few square kilometers in northern Tanzania. A geological accident, a once-in-a-planet occurrence. That accident became its identity, and eventually its weakness. Tanzanite is a variety of zoisite, transformed by vanadium and heat into a violet-blue fire that shifts color with every light source. In sunlight, it burns indigo. Under lamplight, it glows purple. For decades, that color change mystique drove collectors wild. Tiffany built entire campaigns around its exclusivity. Found only in Tanzania, 1,000 times rarer than diamond. The slogan worked. By the early 2000s, Tanzanite was a luxury staple, rivaling sapphire in prestige. However, rarity sells quickly, and even faster when the market believes it's in short supply. By 2010, mining intensified around Mirarani Hill. What began as an artisanal extraction process evolved into an industrial one. Within 10 years, global exports exceeded 50 million carats. The gem that promised scarcity now fueled supply chains. By 2023, oversupply collided with a slowing luxury market. Television shopping channels sold Tanzanite bracelets in bulk. E-commerce platforms listed investment-grade stones at factory prices. For the first time, buyers stopped believing the rarity story. Prices dropped nearly 60% between 2022 and 2025. Dealers call it the paradox of plenty. Even worse, imitation and color-treated quartz began circulating, visually identical to low-grade Tanzanite. At gem expos, traders quietly admit, it's too easy to fake the look, and too hard to prove the origin. The more people saw Tanzanite, the less they valued it. Its myth of uniqueness, once its strongest asset, became its most fragile illusion. Tanzanite's collapse is not geological, it's narrative. A story built on singularity cannot survive mass exposure. When every ad calls it rare, the word loses power. When every jewelry shop sells it, the legend becomes noise. Even in Tanzania, where miners still dream of the next big vein, there's quiet resignation. Local officials talk about heritage mining, not expansion, because everyone knows once the last pocket runs dry, the story ends. Not with discovery, but with exhaustion. If you've ever watched a miracle lose its meaning through repetition, leave a comment. Because Tanzanite's tragedy isn't that it's fading, it's that we've looked at it too long to see it still. Before the factories and the slogans, before the mining rush and the flood of color, there was a single patch of land beneath Kilimanjaro where blue fire met Earth for the first time. The story began with rarity. It ends with repetition, a legend told too often to sound still true. But while Tanzanite's story ends in exposure, the following gem faces a harsher truth. A red treasure so inflated by desire that even the mines fear its own price tag. Ranked 6th, Burmese Ruby, commercial grade, the red bubble. Prices soared before anyone asked why. By the time they did, the fire had already burned too hot. The Burmese Ruby's legend turned from passion to speculation. In the auction rooms of Hong Kong and Geneva, red has never been worth so much or meant so little. The Burmese Ruby, once a symbol of eternal fire, now burns with the fever of speculation. Every new sale breaks a record, and every record feels more artificial than the last. For decades, ruby has been the heartbeat of the colored gemstone market. But the modern trade no longer beats to the rhythm of rarity. It beats to the rhythm of hype. Rubies form deep within marble deposits, their color born of chromium and heat, a geological accident that occurs in only a handful of places on Earth. For centuries, the most prized came from Myanmar's Mogok Valley, known to ancient traders as the Valley of Rubies. Kings called it the blood of the earth. To own an actual Burmese ruby was to own a piece of immortality. But that sanctity didn't survive the modern economy. As demand exploded in the 2000s, New deposits in Mozambique and Madagascar entered the market. The term Burmese shifted from being primarily about geography to being more about marketing. By 2025, experts estimate that up to 40% of rubies sold under Burmese labels may actually be commercial-grade stones from other regions, which have been heat-treated, color-enhanced, or mixed in parcel trades. In 2015, Sotheby's sold the Sunrise Ruby for $30 million, a record-setting $1.2 million per carat. It marked the start of the ruby bull run. Collectors and hedge funds began treating gemstones as liquid assets. By 2023, investment funds specializing in hard luxury pushed prices of mid-tier rubies up by 300%, and with that, the bubble began to form. Miners expanded production. Heat treatment labs in Bangkok processed thousands of stones weekly to improve clarity and color. Dealers repackaged them as unheated Burmese-type rubies. Even legitimate stones became guilty by association. When everyone claims authenticity, the word loses power. Then came the correction. In early 2025, oversupply met declining demand. Chinese buyers retreated. Online trading platforms reported record cancellations. By mid-year, commercial-grade rubies had fallen nearly 60% in wholesale price. Dealers quietly refer to it as the red crash. The irony is cruel. For centuries, ruby symbolized truth and passion. In 2026, it symbolizes inflation and illusion. The same fire that made it sacred now fuels distrust. When light passes through a treated ruby, it still glows. But what we see is not the Earth's fire. It's the market's reflection. An industry veteran in Bangkok summarized it perfectly. We used to polish stones. Now we polish stories. If you've ever wondered how belief becomes price and price becomes belief, leave a comment. Because the ruby bubble isn't about gemstones. It's about human nature repeating itself in color and shine. In the final moments of an auction, a ruby catches the light. Pure, red, unbroken. The hammer falls. Months later, its price does too. Under magnification, a thin white line appears inside the stone. A stress fracture. Not visible to the naked eye, but enough to reveal the truth. Even perfection can break. If rubies crack under pressure, the following gem burns out completely. A royal treasure losing its flame in silence. Ranked 5th, Imperial Topaz, the forgotten gem of kings. How the royal flame faded away. 2 centuries ago, emperors wore it as a symbol of divine fire. Now Imperial Topaz waits in quiet drawers, too honest in color for a market addicted to spectacle. In the hills of Ouro Preto, Brazil, miners still search the veins of an ancient volcanic field where the royal flame once burned. The world called it Imperial Topaz. Golden, fiery, almost supernatural in its glow. 2 centuries ago, only emperors were allowed to own it. Today, few even remember its name. The mines are quiet now. What was once a treasure of kings has become a whisper in the gem trade, a relic of an era when color itself carried authority. Topaz forms in granite cavities rich in fluorine, crystallizing slowly from the gases of cooling magma. When iron replaces part of its molecular lattice, the stone turns amber-orange, a hue once compared to a sunset through a brandy glass. In the 19th century, Brazilian imperial families reserved these stones for coronations and as gifts to the state. European courts prized them as symbols of enlightenment and wealth. Unlike common yellow topaz, the true imperial carried a rare reddish overtone, a color that appeared only in narrow seams around Ouro Preto. Then slowly, the empire ended. And so did the gem's mythology. By the late 20th century, Imperial Topaz faced 2 enemies: fashion and imitation. Its orange-amber tone fell out of favor as pink sapphires and citrines dominated jewelry trends. At the same time, laboratories began producing coated quartz marketed as champagne topaz. Visually similar, chemically worthless. As demand slipped, the few remaining Brazilian mines reduced output. Exports dropped by nearly 70% between 2010 and 2024. Dealers once specialized in grading red sherry hues by eye. Now they sell by weight, not color. At auction, A 1-carat fine Imperial Topaz that sold for $2,500 in 2012 struggles to reach $800 in 2025. The flame still burns, but only in memory. In literature and religion, topaz symbolized divine fire, a light that purified without consuming. When monarchies fell and faith waned, that symbolism dimmed. The gem's meaning shifted from sacred to decorative. Even in Brazil, few young jewelers recognize its historical prestige. A mine supervisor in Ouro Preto summarized it bluntly: "We are digging for nostalgia, not profit." That sentence captures the entire market. What once defined power now struggles to remain relevant. If you've ever wondered how something can fade not because it failed, but because the world moved on, leave a comment. Because Imperial Topaz didn't collapse in scandal or greed. It just grew quiet while louder colors took its place. In the last active shaft, a miner wipes dust from a dull orange crystal. No cameras, no bidders, no sound but breathing. The stone flickers once in the lamplight, a brief echo of its royal fire. Then darkness closes in, and the mountain keeps its secret. If Imperial Topaz fades through silence, the following gem faces the opposite fate. A jewel so bright, so hyped, it may collapse under the noise of its own fame. Ranked fourth, Paraíba Tourmaline, the gem that burned too bright. When obsession became collapse. Blue should calm the mind. This one doesn't. Paraíba burns with a light too alive for comfort, a color that electrified the world and exhausted itself in the process. In the gem trade, blue is a promise, calm, endless, safe. But the Paraíba Tourmaline is none of those things. It doesn't calm, it shocks. It glows with a voltage so fierce that gem dealers once called it neon trapped in crystal. That light made it famous. Now it may be what destroys it. The first Paraíba Tourmaline surfaced in the late 1980s in the hills of Paraíba, Brazil, where copper minerals fused within the tourmaline structure, creating an impossible color. Not sky blue, not turquoise, but electric. Its glow came from trace amounts of copper and manganese, a natural phenomenon that no one could reproduce. When it hit the global market in the 1990s, the shock was instant. Nothing else looked alive in comparison. Within a decade, the gem's price skyrocketed beyond that of diamonds. Collectors fought over carats that shimmered like lightning in a bottle. By 2010, Paraíba was the crown jewel of contemporary luxury. Its name alone, Paraíba, became shorthand for status. But no miracle survives mass desire. As the original Brazilian mines depleted, new sources emerged in Mozambique and Nigeria. The chemistry was similar, the colors nearly identical, yet the market refused to treat them as equals. Dealers split into factions: Brazilian Paraíba for prestige, African Paraíba for compromise. The branding war inflated prices further. Speculators entered the scene. Stones once worth $5,000 per carat sold for over $50,000. Marketing reframed scarcity as a virtue. Collectors stopped buying gems, they bought mythology. By 2025, that mythology began to collapse. Gemological labs confirmed that chemical composition could no longer guarantee origin. Dealers quietly admitted that even certified Brazilian stones might include African material mixed in trade. When location becomes uncertain, value becomes unstable. And in a market built on color and story, uncertainty is poison. Paraíba's brilliance is an illusion of danger, a gemstone that looks electric but isn't. Its color tricks the brain into reading energy as light. Collectors describe it as alive, but that aliveness feeds a market addiction, a race to own what can't be replaced. The irony is absolute. The brighter the stone, the faster the depletion. Brazil's primary vein is nearly exhausted. Mozambique's yield is declining, and still, buyers chase it, each purchase justified by fear that it might be the last. It's not an investment anymore. It's a compulsion. If you've ever loved something so much that it started to disappear in your hands, you understand Paraíba. Its glow is real, but it comes at a cost. When every collector demands a miracle, miracles run out. In display cases across the world, the Paraíba still burns. The same neon, the same impossible blue. But what once symbolized discovery now marks exhaustion. The color of paradise has become the color of depletion, and in its brilliance, we see the price of wanting light too much. If Paraíba dazzles itself to death, the following gem fades for the opposite reason. A stone once untouchable, now exposed by the weight of history. Ranked third, Padparadscha Sapphire, the gem too perfect to trust. Beauty under suspicion. No gem divides experts like this one. Between pink and orange lies a color so fragile it can't be agreed upon. A beauty that only exists when no one defines it. In the gem trade, few colors cause more arguments than this one. A fragile mix of pink and orange, balanced between sunrise and sunset. To name it is to take a side. They call it Padparadscha, a word borrowed from the Sinhalese Padmaraga, lotus blossom. However, by 2026, even that name had become a battlefield. Every Padparadscha must walk a razor's edge. Too pink, and it's a fancy sapphire. Too orange, and it's dismissed as a spinel or topaz. Only the perfect in-between, the breath between colors, earns the title. And that perfection has become its curse. Proper Padparadscha forms in Sri Lanka, where trace amounts of iron and chromium paint corundum in balanced dual tones. Each crystal forms over millions of years, shaped by temperature and trace elements, and is almost impossible to replicate. But as global demand surged, that impossibility became an invitation. By the early 2000s, heat treatment and beryllium diffusion had flooded the market with stones that looked identical to the originals. The same hue, the same clarity, but none of the history. The difference between natural and altered could only be seen through spectroscopy. Invisible to collectors, catastrophic to trust. In 2023, a Geneva auction sold a 5.2-carat Padparadscha for $1.6 million, then quietly withdrew a second lot after laboratory testing revealed heat diffusion. The scandal barely made headlines, but inside the trade, it triggered panic. If the world's most reputable institutions can't agree on what's real, what happens to the rest of the market? Gemologists began to disagree on definitions. The Lotus Gemology Institute allows a narrow color window for the name. Other labs expand it to include African or Madagascar stones. Some buyers refuse to purchase any gem that has been treated. The result? A luxury market fractured by opinion. Even seasoned traders admit the problem isn't fraud, it's beauty itself. Padparadscha's appeal lies in a color so subjective that truth can't be measured. In trying to define it, we've turned beauty into evidence. Historically, the Padparadscha has symbolized harmony, a union of fire and water, representing the masculine and feminine. In Buddhist traditions, the lotus represented enlightenment rising above impurity, but now the gem's duality has become its liability. What once symbolized balance now invites doubt. At trade fairs, buyers examine stones under multiple lights, each angle producing a different verdict. Under LED, the gem looks pink. Under daylight, orange dominates. The truth shifts with illumination. The more we analyze, the less we see. If you've ever stared at something so beautiful you started to question whether it was real, you understand Padparadscha. Because sometimes the line between authenticity and illusion isn't drawn in science, it's drawn in desire. Under the microscope, the Padparadscha glows softly, half pink, half orange. The gemologist adjusts the lamp. The color tilts, almost imperceptibly, toward red. A pause. Notes are written, cameras click, opinions divide. The stone says nothing. It simply reflects what each observer needs to see. If Padparadscha's truth bends with perception, the following gem breaks it entirely. A diamond whose price and history have both become unsustainable myths. Ranked second, lab-grown diamonds. When perfection killed value, the mass-produced collapse. Perfection was supposed to save the industry. Instead, it erased it. In the hum of reactors, beauty became an algorithm. Flawless, endless, and empty. In the laboratories of Surat, Singapore, and Shenzhen, beauty is no longer mined. It's manufactured. Rows of reactors hum in darkness, each chamber simulating the Earth's core. Within weeks, carbon vapor condenses into crystal. Flawless, colorless, identical. 1 billion years of pressure compressed into a production schedule. This is the diamond reinvented. And for the first time in history, Perfection has become affordable. But the miracle came with a flaw no microscope can detect: value without scarcity. For centuries, diamonds were not rare. Only their story was. Cartel control, emotional marketing, and the phrase "a diamond is forever" built an empire on illusion. Then came CVD and HPHT, technologies capable of replicating natural growth conditions with atomic precision. At first, labs produced industrial diamonds. By the 2010s, they made engagement stones. By 2025, they made a collapse. Production scaled exponentially. Factories produced over 12 million carats a year, each indistinguishable from the natural version. Even gemological institutes struggled to keep pace, creating new spectroscopic systems to distinguish between born of Earth and born of machine. At first, consumers celebrated: ethical, affordable, perfect. Then investors panicked. When diamonds could be printed like circuit chips, resale value evaporated. In less than 5 years, average market prices fell by 70%. Under magnification, a lab diamond is flawless. No inclusions, no history, no imperfections. But imperfection was the source of meaning. A natural diamond carries narrative. Formed under prehistoric oceans, lifted by volcanoes, carved by human hands. Lab stones carry no story. They are. Collectors describe the feeling as unsettling. The gem is perfect, but emotionally hollow, a symbol of love produced on demand. Even luxury brands that once embraced the ethical narrative quietly step back, aware that luxury cannot survive mass replication. By 2026, surplus inventory fills warehouses across India and China. Machines continue to run, even as profit margins disappear. Factories that once sold brilliance now sell anonymity. Stones priced by wattage, not wonder. For centuries, humanity has sought to harness the power of nature. Lab-grown diamonds achieved it, and the moment they did, they erased the awe that made nature valuable. It's not a failure of technology, it's a failure of meaning. The diamond, once a witness to time, is now a timestamp of progress. It records not eternity, but efficiency. If you've ever felt that something too perfect can't be precious, you already understand this story. Because when perfection becomes ordinary, beauty becomes invisible. Before the reactors, before the factories, before the idea that love could be synthesized, there was carbon drifting in darkness, waiting for time to press it into meaning. Now time has been replaced by machinery, and meaning by mass production. The diamond dream didn't end, it simply looped backward from miracle to method. And yet, among all the collapses of 2026, one gem stands apart. Not because it failed, but because it may never recover its myth again. In first place, pink diamond, the end of rarity, the final light of the Argyle legacy. The mine is silent, the color is gone. What remains of the Argyle pink is not luxury, it's absence, the echo of light that will never return. In Western Australia, the mine is silent now. The tunnels that once glowed with the color of sunsets are sealed beneath red earth. For 37 years, the Argyle diamond mine gave the world its rarest light, a shade of pink so vivid that no laboratory has ever replicated it. Then in 2020, the last carat was lifted from the ground. The gates closed. The color ended. What remains today are memory and speculation. Stones that move through auctions like relics from a vanished age. Each one is a remnant of geological chance, political timing, and human awe. The Argyle pink isn't extinct, it's simply over. Unlike most diamonds formed deep within Earth's mantle, Argyle stones were born in ancient lamproite, not kimberlite, a rare volcanic rock that rewrote geological theory. Traces of deformation in the crystal lattice bend light differently, creating hues that range from rose to magenta to deep purplish red. No other deposit on Earth shared this chemistry. When the mine opened in 1983, even experts underestimated its importance. Then the first pinks emerged, glowing, unrepeatable. By the 1990s, Argyle pink commanded over $1 million per carat. By 2020, they were priceless because there were no more to mine. After closure, Rio Tinto launched the Argyle pink tender, the final sale, a ceremonial auction of the last 70 stones. Collectors describe the event like a funeral. Every gem sold. Then as the years passed, prices doubled, tripled, fractured into mythology. In 2025, a 2.05-carat Argyle Stella sold for $8 million. But experts warned, the price wasn't valuable, it was memory. When rarity reaches absolute zero, trade becomes a matter of theology. Buyers aren't purchasing gems. They're purchasing the right to say it existed. For centuries, pink diamonds symbolized romance, love, and devotion. Now they represent extinction. Collectors compare them to Renaissance paintings or lost manuscripts. Treasures that can only be preserved, not replaced. Museums request loans. Private vaults remain closed. The Argyle brand, once alive with marketing color, now lives only in press archives and carbon dating reports. Its absence has become its new identity. And yet, even in that absence, imitation thrives. Laboratories flood the market with lab-grown pinks, which are flawless and inexpensive. They imitate hue, brilliance, chemistry, everything except consequence. The originals remain beyond replication because rarity itself cannot be manufactured. In the language of gemology, color is caused by defects, by atoms out of place. It's fitting, then, that the world's most beautiful pink came from imperfection, and its end came from perfection. The mine's closure marked the end of geological coincidence. Nothing left to correct, nothing left to improve. If you've ever looked at something irreplaceable and felt the weight of time rather than its beauty, you understand this ending. The Argyle story doesn't conclude with discovery, it concludes with disappearance. At the edge of the Argyle pit, red dust drifts where machines once roared. The ground is scarred but still. A single shaft of sunlight strikes the rock face. No sparkle, no reflection. The pink is gone. What remains is space, the absence where color once lived. And that is the story of 15 gemstones whose value could implode in 2026. Not because they are worthless, but because even beauty obeys the laws of time. If you follow this journey to the end, subscribe to Tops for the next expedition, because somewhere beneath the silence, the earth is still creating its next miracle. Every gem on this list once captured the world's desire, symbols of power, luck, and eternity. But time has its own alchemy. What glitters today can vanish tomorrow, leaving only stories behind. The truth is, rarity was never about price. It was about the silence that follows when the mine closes, and the light that still lingers long after the gem is gone. If this journey moved you, subscribe to Tops and join the exploration. Because understanding beauty means watching it disappear, one gem at a time.